I mean, in the moment, yeah, it was terrible. But
Hmm.
in hindsight, I really realized how valuable it was because it taught me I have to have boundaries.
Hmm.
If I don't put boundaries around my time and around the things that I'm willing to do and not do, people are just going to always pile stuff on. Like they will give you as much as you'll take. And
Right.
I was like, no, no, no. It's time to really start thinking about what do I love and what do I not love about this job? And I will embrace and do the things I love. But if I don't, and I don't have to do it, I'm not. I'm
Mm.
just going to say no.
Your choice to begin and continue working in education should not be taken lightly. But how do you manage it all while keeping that fire burning bright so you can show up in your classroom and in life as your best self every day? That's what this show is all about. Welcome to the Burned In Teacher podcast. I'm Amber Harper, classroom teacher, author of Hacking Teacher Burnout, and with more and more teachers quitting the profession or accepting #teacher misery as their forever reality, I step in as your teacher burnout coach to help you take your next best steps to creating a happier and more fulfilled career and life. Now, let's take one more step forward and out of burnout together so we can burn on. Shall we? Let's go. Well, hey there, Burned In Teachers. Welcome to episode 184 of the Burned In Teacher podcast. I'm Amber Harper, your host, and I'm so grateful that you decided to join us today for this Burned In Teacher Spotlight episode with a Burned In Teacher student and member, Wayne Basinger. Wayne has been teaching for 21 years, and he currently teaches Honors English 10 with an emphasis on philosophy and AP Art history. He loves meditation, the Peloton, and gratitude journaling. And if you taught during COVID, then his story is going to be extremely relatable. But if you didn't teach during COVID, you're also going to find a lot of really great perspectives from Wayne, because what you're going to realize, and you even heard it in the intro at the beginning of this episode, he learned a lot through this hardship and through this feeling of survival that he felt like he was in. And it's so extremely relatable. I actually get a little emotional listening to his story at one point. So we're going to dive into this episode here in just a minute, but I want to remind you of a couple of things. Number one, we've got the summer series book study coming up, the Hacking Teacher Burnout Summer Series book study. I am so extremely pumped about this. Starting June 3rd, I'm going to be taking you through the reflection questions in the Hacking Teacher Burnout book study guide that we have on TPT. So if you haven't already, you should definitely get your hands on Hacking Teacher Burnout and the book study guide, as well as join our Burned In Teacher podcast Facebook community. You can get the links to all of those things here in the show notes. And of course, I'm sending links out to my email list. So if you are on my email list, you've probably already gotten these links sent to your way already. And if you have not considered leaving a rating and review, I would so appreciate it. Whenever you leave ratings and reviews, especially on Apple Podcasts, when other teachers go to Apple Podcasts and they search different topics like mindset or teacher burnout, ratings and reviews help Burned In Teacher to rank higher and helps them to find the podcast easier. And I got this amazing review from Living on Hope. She said, consistent positive change, and she gave us a really sweet 5-star rating. I've been listening to Amber for almost 2 years after I discovered her book and website. She's helped me down a path of positive and consistent change. It hasn't been easy, but her support and advice have helped me to make so many changes in my personal and professional life. Amber doesn't just help people as teachers, she helps people as people. And you know, that is definitely the goal around here. So thank you so much, Living on Hope, for leaving that amazing review. I appreciate it so, so much. And I'd love to give you guys a shout out too. If you leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, it's super easy. Just go into the app, tap on the Burned In Teacher podcast, scroll all the way to the bottom, and you'll see a place where you can leave a rating and then type in a review. I would appreciate it so much. So I feel like I've said that like 15 times, so I apologize. And finally, if you find this interview intriguing and you want to have a success story like Wayne has had, then you can always join the Burned In Teacher University course anytime. I never close the doors, and that is not a popular thing to do in the online business world, but I refuse. I want to help teachers when they need it, and when you are at your rock bottom moment and you want the help and you need the help, I want to be here for you. So you can go to burnedinteacher.com/course to learn everything about what you'll learn, what you'll get. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to DM me at burnedinteacher on Instagram or send me a quick email, support@burnedinteacher.com. I would love to hear from you and answer any of your questions that you might have about changing your life through this course, because that's what it was designed to do. This course is exactly what I needed when I was struggling so badly, so deeply, close to 10 years ago. There was nothing like this in sight. And I decided to become my own hero, and I want to help you to become yours. So without further ado, let's dive into my interview with Wayne. Well, hey, Wayne, thank you so much for joining us today on the Burned In Teacher podcast. Will you tell the listeners a little bit about you?
Sure. My name is Wayne Basinger. I'm an English teacher at Cleveland High School in Reseda. This is my 21st year at this school, and I'm also the coach of the debate team. I work as a coordinator of my grade level in our magnet program, so I wear lots of hats. Can get a little stressful from time to time, and so thankful that I found your podcast and all of your wonderful strategies to stay burned in instead of burned out.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. So yeah, you are a very busy man.
For sure.
So tell us a little bit about, let's start at the beginning. Like, did you always want to be a teacher? Is that something you always wanted to do? Or did you have a career before this? Let us know a little bit about that.
Absolutely. This is my second career. At first, I was a human resources executive. So I used to hire and fire people for a living.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah, I lived through the dot-com boom and bust. And so one startup
Mm,
company I worked for made $250 million. We had an on-site massage therapist. Everything was amazing. And then the next
wow.
company I worked for went bankrupt, and I had to fire 163 people, including myself.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's atrocious. So what took you to teaching?
I knew that I couldn't stay in a profession where I might have to fire, 163 people, including grandmothers who were the sole means of support for their grandchildren. It just wasn't fulfilling. And I'd always had a desire kind of in the back of my mind to go into teaching. And I knew a woman who was a counselor at the high school where I work. And so
Mm,
she's like, "Oh, I think we're hiring in special ed. Let me talk to the principal." I go in for an interview, and in less than 5 minutes, I have a job offer. I'm driving down to the district office, and they're basically like, "If you'll join an emergency credential program, I can hire you for next year." And so
wow.
it was like almost overnight that I went from being in the corporate world to
Mhm.
becoming a teacher.
Okay. So you started your teaching profession in special ed.
Yeah, I did 5 years in special education, both at like the special day class, which is kids who read at like a third to fifth grade reading level, and
Mm-hmm.
then RSP, where you're trying to integrate them back into general education classes and give them extra support that they need to be
Wow.
successful.
That's fantastic. So is that part of your burnout story, or I was going to ask you,
Yeah, of course.
what is that story for you? I mean, have you just burned out once? Has it been multiple times, multiple reasons? Let us into that part of your life, if you will.
Yeah, I've burned out a couple of times. I left special ed because it looked like we were just going to become glorified paper pushers and assistants in the classroom. They took away the pull-out classes where you actually got to work directly with kids,
Hmm.
and you were going to just sit in the back and basically write IEPs, and that didn't appeal to me at all. So that was kind of the first time I knew I needed to make a change. So I went back and got my English credential, and then got into our magnet program here. And I've switched classes. I tend to get bored every 5 to 7 years. I think I'm definitely in that burned out and bored situation quite a bit. And so luckily we have lots of flexibility between our grade levels. So I've taught, a movie, basically a film class. I've taught a digital production class. Like I've been able to switch things up. But I really kind of found my sweet spot where I'm at now, both in philosophy and art history are the two classes I teach. And they're just absolutely fantastic. But I really hit burnout most recently during COVID. Like
Hmm.
it was just insane. We had somebody leave our program in the middle of the year. And so I had to take on an auxiliary that I didn't want, which means you lose your conference period. It increases your grading. So, you're doing all the prep and grading that you normally do during your conference period at home on the weekends. And so I just felt like I was just getting more buried and more buried and more buried.
Yeah.
And I remember specifically, it was the third day of the semester last spring when Omicron was exploding. And we were supposed to go, we did 2 days of kind of social emotional learning, like helping the kids deal with the crisis that was, impending, that we all knew was coming. And then we were supposed to go back to curriculum. And I just woke up from a dead sleep in the middle of the night, run to my computer. And the only thought that kept running through my head was, I'm not ready. I'm not going to be able to teach today. I don't have what I need. So I'm frantically looking through computer files, just trying to find anything to supplement the lesson. And then I look at the corner of the screen and it's 2:30 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like, what on earth are you doing? And then I kind of sat back for a second. I'm like, I think I'm having a panic attack, but I'd never had one before. So I actually didn't know what a panic attack was. So I had to Google what are the symptoms of a panic attack. And it was racing heart, which absolutely had, inability to sleep, and inability to control your thoughts, like just spirals of negative thoughts. And I'm like, wow, I have the trifecta. I totally am having my first panic attack of my entire life. And I knew something was desperately wrong and I needed solutions immediately. Obviously, my body was telling me, stop trying to teach curriculum in the middle of an explosion of a pandemic. Like, you need to ease in and let the kids ease in, because the next day at school, 1/3 of the students were out because of either fear of Omicron or they had it. And it was like, why are you trying to jump into curriculum in the middle of that? But our magnet coordinator and our principal said, you got to get back to curriculum. We got to push through it. And it was crazy.
Isn't it interesting how those stories that we tell ourselves really do affect our mental health and then eventually our physical health, like you said? I mean, and what's so scary about that situation too is that panic attacks are a lot of times confused for heart attacks. Like, you're wondering if this is something like panic attacks are obviously serious, but heart attack is obviously, could be deadly. So that's so terrifying that you went through that. So, and it's also so interesting to me that, you woke up, you were telling yourself that you were just going to jump right back in as if it was normal. And, on that first day back of curriculum, because, your powers that be were telling you that, where now I hope that you see that you could have eased up on yourself a little bit. Like there's like breathing down your neck, right?
Absolutely. And so I was very lucky. I had a therapist who I was able to reach out to. I'd used her a few years ago, but then, reached out and said, hey, I'm really struggling, got me in, and we really started working on those negative thoughts. That was the first place I had to attack. And so she introduced me to the concept of automatic negative thoughts, the ones that just keep reoccurring. And the ones that kept hitting me were, you're not working hard enough. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough to do this job anymore. You don't have it. The world's changed and you're just not ready for it. And that was just on repeat, on a loop for me. And I almost quit. Like, I drafted my resignation letter. And without therapy, I would have turned it in.
I've been in that place, not specifically like yours, but hearing you tell that story, it almost makes me emotional, because when you get to that place, you really, like, in your mind, that there's no hope for you. Like, you are telling yourself that there is no way out, and it becomes that fight or flight, which is where that panic attack comes from, right?
Right. Exactly.
Oh my gosh. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, because that's so deeply personal. So leading up to the pandemic, were things okay? Were you feeling confident? You were just kind of cruising along? Was it in fact just that, specific instance, that specific situation that you were put in with COVID? Was that the cause, or as you've gone through this program and really reflected on where this began, did it begin before that?
I've always had moments where I had burnout, but I was always able to bounce back. Right. You have, in our program, we're a writing intensive program, college preparation. And so we have these massive essays that we give every 10 weeks. And so when you're in the middle of that stack of grading, it's real easy to get burned out, and you figure out how to shuffle things in your classes and you back off of grading until that pile is done. So it was manageable. But when COVID hit, what was normal and manageable became completely unmanageable. And then you throw in the stress of an additional class. It was also a prep that I was not ready for. And it hit mid semester. The woman left in the middle of fall semester. And so I think I had 3 days notice.
Wow.
And luckily it was a class I had taught before that I was picking up. So I had the materials, but you're just not in the groove when it hits you mid semester. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I used all of winter break to get prepared. I'm like, I'm going to be ahead of this. And then Omicron hits, and all of those lesson plans I had just had to be thrown in the trash or at least delayed.
And
And it
then
was
there's that added,
frustrating.
yes, that added
Yeah.
frustration of the wasted rest, like your
Yeah.
wasted break, because you did all of that work for free. And that
Yeah.
just like, you can't just ignore that. It just eats away at you. I have totally been
Yeah.
there too. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that you went through that way. And that really, really just sucks.
Yeah. No, in the moment, yeah, it was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But in hindsight, I really realized how valuable it was because it taught me I have to have boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't put boundaries around my time and around the things that I'm willing to do and not do, people are just going to always pile stuff on. Like they will give you as much as you'll take. And
Right.
I was like, no, no, no. It's time to really start thinking about what do I love and what do I not love about this job? And I will embrace and do the things I love. But if I don't, and I don't have to do it, I'm not. I'm
Mm,
just going to say no.
I love it. And that's our
Yeah.
podcast for today, people. No, I'm just kidding. The
No,
end.
but that's why I love your program so much because it does those two things almost right out of the gate. It makes you really reflect on your thoughts. Like, what are the stories I'm telling myself? And if they're negative, like, is that reality or is that just a bunch of BS? Because the thing my therapist taught me to do, we call it the anteater. And you take all of those negative thoughts and you list them on the left-hand side of a page, you make a T chart. And on the right, you write counters to it. Well, when has this not been true? Or when is this just completely false?
Mm-hmm.
And once you start writing the counter arguments, you're like, this is ridiculous. This isn't true. This isn't reality. When did I come up with this story? And eventually I didn't even need to write the chart because I'm like, oh, it's the negative thought again. That's a lie. I'm just moving on now. And it was night and day.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could become creative again. Like I went back through my lesson plans. I'm like, oh my God, this is a winner that I used to use. And the kids loved it. I put it in. It was low grading because it was one that I used during a stressful time. And I'm like, I
Mm-hmm.
want something that's going to be a winner, that's not going to bury me in grading. And it was like the kids ate it up. And I was happy to be there. And I was back in the groove again.
Mm-hmm.
But until I turned those negative thoughts off, I could not access the creative part of my teaching brain. And I just felt like I was getting buried further and further every day. And
Yeah.
once I just eliminated the negative thoughts, I could unbury myself finally.
You created clarity is what you did.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
really did. That burnout just becomes like this wall of fog where like you can't see past anything but how overwhelmed or frustrated or
Yeah.
anxious that you are about all of these things that are happening around you. And it really does take you just stopping and paying attention. And exactly
Yeah.
what you were talking about with what your therapist called the anteater, that's what we do in the program with
Yeah.
creating those rebuttals. Like, this is a lie because, or that's BS, or this is not true. Like you're lying and like naming that part of
Yeah.
you that tries to sneak in and tear you down is so important.
Absolutely. Yeah. The mindset. I see exactly why you put that first because it is absolutely positively the first step. You can't go to strategies until you tackle mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Because once
And
I did
that's
that, like the lights came on. It felt
And
like,
that's what's so hard about doing this work is that nobody wants to hear that you have to start with your mindset, right? No one wants to hear that you have to accept responsibility, that I'm not blaming you for this. It's not your fault, but you're the only one who can change this because you have to change your mind first. And no one can change your mind but you.
absolutely. It, yeah, I do. And I use the language, stop, burning yourself out.
Mhm.
And people do put up those defensive walls, but it's like, yeah, the system has lots of things that are going to try to burn you out. But if you're adding to it, if you're building, helping to build that wall, stop. Just
Yeah.
stop
Just
and
stop.
take the actions that will help you breathe and help you be creative and find those solutions that are there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm gonna I'm gonna kind of sneak up on you here and talk about something I didn't
Sure,
plan on talking about, but you
sure.
asked such a great question on our coaching call last week. You said, "How do I talk about these things that I'm learning and all of these things that have helped me so much? How do I talk about them and tell people about them whenever they're, having a hard time, whenever they're struggling? How do I let them know about Burn and Teacher?" I said, well, you can't. Like you can't preach to someone who doesn't want to, sit in the pulpit, right? Like
Yeah,
if they aren't there for it, there's no use because, we're not there to change their mind. We're there to, and I just said, continually just show up and model what it looks like, right? So
yeah,
how has that
absolutely.
gone for you?
Pretty well. What I've done is I've approached teachers that I know are really struggling, who I think are open because they're at such a they're at a bottom, right? They're
Hmm.
really close to rock bottom. And I'm like, hey, do you just want to go out to dinner?
Hmm.
Can I just, and I just empathetically listen. Like,
Hmm.
tell me what's happening. And, you know, I took like three teachers out a couple of weeks ago, and we met at like 4:30 at El Torito. We thought we'd have some appetizers,
Hmm.
and we'd have some fun. We stayed for 4 hours because they just kept telling their stories
Wow.
of how they're burned out, how they feel underappreciated,
Hmm.
just not heard, not seen,
Hmm.
and that was what made the dam break.
Hmm.
And then they're like, what can you share with me? And so I started sharing little pieces of your workbook, and I'm like, hey, listen to Amber's podcast. If you're really interested in it, join Burned In Teacher. It makes the transformation. It really does.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing
Yeah,
everything that you've learned and spreading the message. That's something that's I can't, whenever people listen to the podcast, of course, I hope it feels like, we're sitting down at the table together.
yeah,
But you're doing what I can't do. I can't be everywhere at
yeah.
once. So I really do appreciate you, spreading that burned in message. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it because I think you have really nailed the system. Like, I wrote a book. It was really more of a memoir for me to kind of process what I went through during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, as I'm flipping through the book, going chapter by chapter, I'm like, wow, that's exactly what Amber said. Wow, that's exactly what, like, literally, we are so on the same page. And so I'm so glad you put it in such a condensed, easy to follow system that I can hand it to a teacher and go, do this. It works.
Thank
It's
you.
really a terrific what you've put together.
Thank you so much. I feel like it is my life's work.
Yeah.
I never want anybody to suffer in isolation, and also in tandem, very publicly, um,
Yeah.
and not have a way out. Like we have this one life, and I'm so glad that it's had an impact on you in such a positive way. We are going to back up a little bit.
Sure.
So tell me, how did you find Burn In Teacher? Like, what was your first, touch point there?
As I was coming out,
Hmm.
and I just wanted more, like, I thought I had some pretty good suggestions, and my therapist had really helped me, dig my way out and really start to see the sunlight again.
Hmm.
But I knew there had to be more. I knew there were people that were experiencing what I did. So I literally just did a Google search for burned out teachers.
Hmm.
And yours was one of the first things that came up. And then I saw you had so many podcast episodes on. I'm like, oh my God, let me start listening. And then as I listened to more, I'm like, this is awesome. Does she have a course? And then you had a course. And so I bought the course.
Hmm.
And then you have, the university. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. So I've just progressively, everything I've needed, you have it there. And so I'm so happy I did that Google search and that you were one of the first things that came up. It was fantastic. It was like fate that I found it.
Oh, well, thank you so much for telling me that. So it's interesting because I'm so glad that it's coming up, as one of the first things that you see, because when I Googled things back in, 2009,
Mm-hmm.
2010, 2012, it was just the same list of things to do, like practice self-care, drink
Yeah.
more water, get outside, which drinking more water, practicing self-care, getting outside are all good,
Yeah.
They're good for your mental health. Absolutely. But I needed to do way deeper work than that. And I mean, I'm telling you what, whenever I had that breakdown in 2014, that was my rock bottom moment, as you know. And that's when I dove into this idea of like self-help, personal development. I was, my gosh, how old was I in 2014? I was in my early 30s and I had never heard of the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Like,
Mm.
that's not a new book.
No,
Hello. That's like one of the OG books. That and like
no.
Think and Grow Rich, all of these amazing books that are all about your mindset, all about self-awareness. And I'm telling you what, I needed that when I was like 10. Because I developed
Yeah,
those habits. I developed habits of the lack of self-awareness and blaming other people for my problems and not taking action and not knowing what to do. And so I lay all of that out there in the book and in the course. And I'm so glad that you have found that valuable and that it's showing up right there at the top of the search.
yeah. No, what I think yours does that most other things that I've found don't. Either they're toxic positivity, you can make it, it's fine, you're going to be great, or it's the system is in the way and you can't, until the system has changed, you can't do anything. Well, neither of those help, right?
Mm,
You have to do it internally. Yes, it would be great if teacher pay went up and our class sizes were capped and, you didn't have to take on auxiliaries or cover classes, but that's not the reality we live in. That's not
mhm,
going to change anytime soon. It's up to us. If we
mhm,
want change, we have to make it internally and then hope that some external changes happen as well. And that's what I love about your program is it's hands-on things you can do yourself to make your life and mind better.
mm. Thank you. Thank you so much for saying that. So the first 4 modules are a lot of that internal work.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of that, mindset, self-awareness, really reflecting on how you got to where you are, who you want to be known as. It's all of these, a lot of that, like I said, inner work. Now, the last 4 modules are a lot about the action, the planning, thinking about where you want to go, how you're going to get there, who you need to talk to, planning those conversations, all goal setting, manifesting. It's all of these things that are setting you up to actually do something different. So, if you don't mind me asking, what do you see for yourself? Like, what actions have you been taking, and where do you see yourself, in the next year, 3 years, 5 years, if you don't mind sharing?
No, absolutely. I have been the king of shelf help instead of
Mhm.
self help. So I read a book and then it goes on the shelf, and I read a book and it goes on the shelf. And now I've transformed to going deep.
Mhm.
What are the strategies? Read one book and fully implement the ideas and then move on. And so
Mhm.
I'm really digging into burned in teacher, the actions.
Mhm.
So, I definitely have gone from burned out teacher to burned in teacher. Like I'm excited to be in the room again.
Mhm.
I love teaching. I love the material I teach. I love the kids I teach. And now I'm setting up the system so I can maintain that. So when the heavy times hit, and they always do,
Mhm.
that, yeah, it's going to be a struggle, but I can bounce back. I can get through that because I have the systems I can rely on to help me make it through that. And like I said, your system just really puts it all into perspective. Like, okay, now your mindset's good. Now let's get to work to make the systems functional so
Mhm.
you can keep bouncing back because, we're teachers. It
Mhm.
gets hard.
Yeah.
There's no question.
Yeah, being a burn-in teacher doesn't mean that you've got, smooth sailing, blue sky. Well, I mean, you live in Southern California, so you have blue
Yeah.
skies all the time. But yeah, there's hardship to come.
Yeah.
We can't tell the future. We can't make everything, perfect. We're not perfect teachers. We don't have it all figured out, but we do have those systems in place, systems of support, even,
Yeah.
not just logistical systems to help to set us up for success, but support systems as well.
Yeah. And then the other thing I'm really trying to do is be the light for other teachers
Mm,
because I see the other teachers at my school that are they're struggling.
mhm,
You can tell they're one bad comment or one negative evaluation away from walking out. And they're good teachers, they're good people who work hard and love kids. And if there's anything I can do to stop that,
mhm.
I'm going to do it. And so I've stopped caring what the administration might say or what other teachers might say. I'm reaching out and going, hey, I found some strategies. I found some ideas. Do you just want to talk about what you're going through?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we can find a way to make it better.
Yeah. And I can tell you from experience, we talked about this a little bit on our coaching call, but I said, if someone is visibly upset, I will definitely go to them and tell them, hey, I'm here for you if you need me. I'm not going to come in here and try to fix you. I'm not going to come in here and tell you exactly what to do, but I just want you to know that I'm here for you. And it takes a lot of courage for someone that is feeling that broken, that is feeling that that hurt, that frustrated, that hopeless. It takes a lot of courage for them to walk up to someone like you or me, who, although we have hard times, we clearly are handling them very differently
Yeah.
than
I mean, there's a
others.
lot of shame involved, unfortunately. Like, I
Absolutely.
think teachers, we tend to shame those that we
Mhm.
think are struggling.
Mhm.
Oh, you just can't hack it. When we've been through the most insane times in education in well over a century.
Right.
And so it's time for us to put down the shame barriers and go, how can I help?
Mm-hmm.
What do you need?
Yeah, wrap our arms
And
around these people. Absolutely. They need our love and
absolutely.
support more than ever, more than ever.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because even though the pandemic has, kind of backed off, at least for now, people are still hurting. People still need love. People are still overwhelmed. They're still overworked. They're still underpaid. All of these things, like we've talked about, like the system is not set up for us to be successful. We need each other more than ever.
Absolutely. And that's definitely the message I'm trying to convey at my school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here for you. If you just need somebody to talk to, I'm here for you. If you need strategies to help, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
Whatever you need. And I think that's my mission. I just found a great quote that I think applies to you and to me, that you are always most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were.
Mm. That is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
100%. You
And
can't
that's what I
understand.
want to be.
Yeah. You can't
Yeah,
possibly understand unless you've been there yourself, right?
absolutely.
So if you were to talk to somebody that that was, on the like they're struggling, we've already kind of talked about that. And, if they had heard about Burn and Teacher University, what would you tell them? What would you tell them about how, like, what would their first step be that you would suggest that they would take?
I definitely think just really starting to reflect on the thoughts you have. I mean, it's mindset first.
Mm-hmm.
And so what are the thoughts that keep spiraling through your head? And really encourage people not to judge themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your mind is going to send you thoughts that are completely and utterly untrue, but until you capture them, you're just going to sit in that spiral and keep getting pulled further and further down.
Mm-hmm.
Be honest with yourself, what thoughts are going through your head, and then are they true? Really start to question, are those accurate? Are those who you really are? Or is that what the circumstance you've been thrown into has made you? And are there ways to change the circumstance
Mm-hmm.
to make that untrue?
100%. So what caused you to, dive in and enroll in Burn and Teacher University? Like you said, you found the podcast, you listened, you noticed there was the course, you noticed then that you could enroll, that I don't close the doors because I want to help teachers whenever they need the help. What caused you to say, I'm in, I'm ready to do this?
The fact that you make overviews available so people can make an informed decision if it's going to help. And everything I read was like things that I already knew were true. I just needed to go a deep dive and get practical strategies to do it. So everything I looked at, I'm like, it totally resonated. Like, yeah, I totally believe that. Now I need the strategy to go achieve it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Burned In Teacher does. It just gives you those practical strategies. And I love the fact that you say, I'm just going to drip, drip, drip it out. It's not like you get a whole course thrown on you and like, do it.
Right.
Because like, I'm already overwhelmed. What are you talking about? Just do
And
a
I know
course.
you guys, like I am
Yeah.
you. If I were to get that full course in my inbox and I was, feeling overwhelmed already, but I'm an overachiever. Like I want that gold star and I'm going to like binge watch it or binge listen, but then I'm not
Absolutely.
going to necessarily take any action. And that's one big reason that I drip it out over 8 weeks. And then you have access to any lesson, any module, anytime after that. But it's really because I know you guys, I know you
Yeah.
would just go, 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 go. when I want this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. And a lot of teachers who go through this, they go through it twice because they've got to hear it. They've got to let it wash over them. And then, they'll go through it again in, 3 to 6 months, and they're further along than what they were before, or they maybe latched onto something that maybe they didn't the first time. And it's really powerful stuff.
Yeah, that's what I love is you can kind of take what you need at any given moment and then go back to it. Like this summer, I plan to really do another deep dive because I grabbed the things I knew I needed to get through the year.
Yes.
But this summer, I'll have time to reflect and go, okay, how am I going to set myself up to be successful all throughout the year and be even a better teacher than I was this year? And so that's what I love about the program. I can go back to it and grab the new things I need because you're right, you progress. And so the things that I needed 3 months ago are not the things I'm going to need during the summer when I'm trying to prep and plan for the following year.
I love it. That's such a great idea. So, Wayne, is there anything else that you'd like to share with the listeners of the podcast today before we sign off?
The only thing I can say, if you're on the fence about joining Burned In Teacher or the university, is jump in. It is so worth. I mean, you make it so incredibly affordable. I can't believe you don't charge the price you charge, and it couldn't be. It's worth its weight in gold. Like these strategies will make you feel good again. That you can take action to make your life better.
Wayne, thank you so much. Those words mean so much to me. And I hope that anyone who's listening to this who has felt hopeless, listening to you, there's no way you can't believe that there is. So you're here in the flesh. So thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you so much for saying such nice things about the program. It's my baby and I will never stop. And I want to help as many teachers to heal from their burnout and to grow and to see it as an opportunity to change their life. And I'm so proud to be part of your journey. So thank you again so much for being here.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure and privilege. And believe me, I'm going to be your greatest cell evangelist. I'm going to tell everybody I know that'll listen to Amber. She's got great stuff.
Oh, thank you so much, Wayne. All right. If you are curious about Burned In Teacher University, go ahead and go to burnedinteacher.com/course. And of course, you can always email me at support@burnedinteacher.com if you have any questions about the program. Thank you so much for being here. Now take a deep breath because you just took another step to becoming a Burned In teacher. Burn on. If you enjoyed today's podcast episode, you can head over to burnedinteacher.com where you can access the entire vault of Burned In Teacher podcast episodes and more information about ways I want to help you go from burned out teacher to burned in human. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would be so grateful if you would head over to iTunes and leave a review and a rating about the Burned In Teacher podcast. Until next time, take a deep breath, because you just took another step to becoming a burned in teacher. Burn on.